We're live. Howdy, howdy. Not much. Check 1, 2.
You're welcome.
We're right here. You kidding me? They understand COVID's mostly over, right? I suppose, but I will admit when I was sick last week, I took like 2 COVID tests because I was like just making sure. Yeah, just making sure that I was not going to unleash any nasties on anybody, you know.
Let's get this thing laminated and turn into a placement.
Well, you could. I'll give you some more. I'll email you the test. Well, you probably don't have a printer this big. I don't know, mother. People don't tell me where they are. Don't know.
Where everyone is.
Delby has not been feeling well, and he worked probably late, I would guess. Now, do you want a separate just in case?
Is that your youth group is starting up this week or something?
Yep, Sunday. Stacy's gonna race him at Palmer's. They're gonna be in go-karts, and he's gonna suddenly pull the Camaro out onto the go-kart track. Oh, that's cool. Those go-karts don't go very fast. Yeah, no. There's this place in Indiana called Page's Crossing, and it's like Palmer's, but like 5 times bigger. And we went there one night, and their go-kart track is like got bridges, and you go under and over and all sorts of stuff. But their go-karts were fast. They were really fast. Is it? Oh yeah. I think we need some place where some track we can just go rent the track for a few hours and take some fast cars out and race them around the track. So, well, we could race like your car against my Celica because that's fairly even match there. So, because I mean, my Celica will go like 0 to 60 in like a day and a quarter. So, yeah, right. We can just build dirt right, That's right. Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure we could easily get permits from the city for that. Yeah, yeah. I get it though because it's like everybody gets to have a giant backyard and have a buffer between them and the rest of, That's still my thought. I mean, I think we should subdivide the property and keep half of it, our parking lot and our front lawn and that sort of thing, and then have a developer sell the rest and develop it into a housing development. We could drop $1 million into our coffers just like that. All we do is mow it. But yeah, we got so much. I mean, and I appreciate the folks who founded this church. We're definitely thinking ahead. As far as making sure we had lots of property. But now it's just become something we mow. Basically, we mow it for the neighbors. And A couple times a year we use it. We're being good neighbors, which is a good thing to do. I mean, I don't want to be a bad neighbor. Oh yeah, there you go. No mow May, right? Yeah. Well, see, this is what I don't understand is they had no mow May. Sounds like a rap record. No mow May. No mow May. But then I don't know what these people were thinking because when your grass hits 10, 12 inches high, you can't just pull out your normal lawnmower and mow through that stuff. You're going to need something different to mow it with. So we did not observe no mow May at my house. We mowed because no, that's not going to happen. Well, I don't know about Waterloo. I don't know what they do. So Cedar Falls, if it's over 8 inches, you'll get a letter, I guess. Supposedly. I mean, mine's never been over 8 inches. So. Yeah. All right. Well, tonight glad to have you, by the way. Tonight we're going to just kind of review since it's been 4 months since we've had Bible study, right? June, July, August. We're half into 3.5. Our last one was the end of May. I know summer went by fast. Yeah, it's been a long time. So we're gonna review so I can get all this stuff back in your head again. I gotta reload all this stuff into your brains. So that then when we pick it up and keep working, you'll know where we're coming from. So that's where we're gonna go. Let's pray. Father, we're grateful tonight to be here to study your word. Pray for the kids downstairs. You'd bless them and pray that you would just guide our hearts and minds tonight as we think about upcoming events, so to speak. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, I'll tell you a funny story. So I'm teaching Monday night down in Des Moines at this church down there, and after the worship, after my second session of teaching, and it's all done, class is over, this lady comes up to me, and she goes, "Okay, well, I get the whole kingdom thing, and I understand this and all, because I was teaching on the kingdom of God." And she's like, "But what do you think happens when Jesus is going to return? I mean, you hear about the tribulation in 7 years, and some people are, there's a rapture first and all this." I said, "Okay." I said, "Now I'm going to tell you what I think the Bible teaches, but I'm going to tell you what you need to do first, before you start thinking through or making any decision. If you don't firmly have a position, is you need to read Matthew 24 and just start there." I said, "But I think that when the time comes that God has done, the fullness of the Gentiles has come in, whatever you want to call it, and God starts that final program," I said, "there is a 7-year period, and I think that somewhere near the end of that, but not quite maybe at the end, that is when Jesus returns, there's a resurrection, it all happens at once, there's no first rapture, and then, Jesus comes just for that, and he comes again, that kind of thing." And I explained a couple other things, and this other lady from across the room pipes up, and she goes, "Yes, that's exactly what I believe." She's like, "It all just kind of happens at once. When Jesus comes back, there's the resurrection, and people come back, and we join him in the air, and then day of the Lord, and then we're done." I'm like, "Oh, wow, so this is good, And I didn't have time to ask her if she's studied it deeply or anything, but it was interesting. She just kind of out of the blue knew exactly what I was saying, and so it was kind of fun. I mean. So anyway. Oh, there's many of us. Believe me. Oh, this is okay. So you're gonna laugh at this. People are gonna watch this later and they're just gonna be like, "Oh my goodness." So I get done Monday night, my first set, because when you teach, it's divided into 2 sessions. You get two 50-minute sessions. And I don't know, I must have just been really animated or something. This young guy in his early 20s, right? He's sitting in the front table. In fact, he and his wife were right in the front table. And he comes up, and I mean, so I didn't tell you this part, but this makes the story even better. He is this he's got white dyed, super bleached hair, right? He's totally surfer looking dude, right? Super nice guy. And he comes up to me and he goes, "Dude, you're a preaching beast." And then he stopped and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry for calling you dude." I'm like, "No, it's cool." I just laughed though. I've never been called a beast before for preaching. Right. Preach. Come see the preaching beast, but not that beast. He was a very nice guy. No, it was really cool. We had a really good talk, but I just thought that was the funniest thing. That was a beast. So, yeah. But he was sorry he called me dude. Yeah. He was great. He was a very nice guy. Brandon. All right. Let's go. Okay. So, got your timeline. Big timeline, right? Because I have a big printer at home. This isn't even the biggest paper it can print on. This is 11 by 17. It can go 13 by 19. But see this, if you fold it, 11 by 17 is two 8.5 by 11 sheets then, so it still fits. So, yeah. So it can print really big stuff. So anyway, stay. Okay, this is the part where you stay, so I can see you. Because if you're right close to my face, I can't see you. Okay, so this is kind of this is our outline. Now you remember that I have based our study coming out of Matthew 24, which is Jesus' description of end time events. Okay, so disciples asked him, what's the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And Jesus walks them through all sorts of things in Matthew 24 and into chapter 25 that talk about his coming and the things that are going to happen at the end. So that is our base text is Matthew 24. And from there, we're fitting the other things like Daniel 9:27 and that sort of thing into Jesus' base text for the end times. So that's what this is based on is going through what he says and then seeing how everything else seems to fit into that. So that's how we come to this timeline, which then talks about Daniel's 70th week, because really that 7-year period, which we have tended historically to call the tribulation, is outlined for us in Daniel chapter 9, verses 27 and 28. That there is going to be a finishing of this program for Israel, and that God is going to fulfill the covenants, that sort of thing. Okay. So in that period, as our outline shows, the 70th week. These are weeks of years, and so this covers verses 4 through verse 32 of Matthew 24. And so the first event that has to take place that starts this period, right? There's this period of the birth pangs, okay, is this making of a covenant. Daniel 9:27 says that there's going to be a world leader of some sort that's going to make a covenant with the people of Israel, and that is the event you're looking for to kick off this period of time. Now, of course, we're not given tons of details about that. We don't know exactly where that leader is going to come from or anything. We get some indications. I mean, it's going to be some sort of Middle Eastern type leader. Don't buy into the whole you probably heard, if you've read any of the old 1960s or 70s books, it's the Pope. It's not going to be the Pope, okay? Or it's going to be this 10 European nations, or it's going to be Russia, or it's going to be all this kind of stuff, okay? It's not going to be like that. Hi, Marie. And do you like your own papers, or do you just want to look on to Brando's? Okay. Sharing is caring. So, I figure out how to turn that off sometime. Anyway, so that's kind of where this period starts. And we know that this period is marked by a variety of upheavals. There's wars and rumors of wars, and there's physical phenomena, right? Earthquakes, and there's pestilence, and there's signs in the heavens, and there's all sorts of stuff that goes on in the midst of this. Okay, and that kind of gets things rolling. At the same time, there's some other things that have to happen. There has to be a rebuilt temple in Israel for this period to happen. Why does there have to be a rebuilt temple in Israel? Does anybody remember? Well, right. But how do we know? We know that's what they're going to do there. But how do we know it has to be? Because you said it. Right, because halfway through, there's this thing called the Abomination of Desolation, where the temple is defiled by this world leader and his cohorts, which kind of marks the middle period of this 7 year, the middle point of this 7 year period. So for it to be defiled, it has to exist in the first place, because it doesn't exist right now. There's a mosque sitting where the temple is right now. So we can surmise from that somehow in this process, this making of this covenant that kind of initiates this period to this abomination of desolation, something happens in the Middle East where somehow the Jews are allowed to have control of the Temple Mount, and they're allowed to rebuild their temple, and some agreement is made that allows this to happen. Because the covenant happened, right? Allows this to happen. It has to be part of the covenant or something. Exactly. Because if they tried to rebuild it tomorrow, I guarantee you'd have war. You'd have lots of war. And you have. I just saw a news article that Joel Richardson had posted a tweet of the other day, where it was from inside Iran, and it was this thing on like a billboard, and it had a picture like with an arrow going from Iran through the Middle East to Jerusalem, and said something about how the road to Jerusalem goes through such and such, and I mean, just outright, the idea that they just someday are going to march right in. And so, they're even now, people over there thinking that. I mean, you have Erdogan in Turkey constantly talking about how the Islamic Empire is going to rise up, and they're going to go in and they're going to take over Jerusalem. I mean, he's outright said this kind of stuff. And so there's enough turmoil there that somehow it's going to set up a situation for some sort of leader to come. And eventually there's going to be this covenant. And somehow that's going to allow the temple to be rebuilt. And there's going to be actual sacrifices going on. And then, of course, we have this abomination of desolation in the middle. And in this abomination, the covenant then is broken, and war is going to break out. And this is going to initiate the second half period, which Jesus calls the Great Tribulation, in verse 21 of Matthew 24, which is also described in Ezekiel 38 and 39 as Gog of Magog, where Gog of Magog describes the war that's going to take place. And anybody want to refresh us? If you remember anything, what's that war going to be like? You remember? Well, what happens in that war? Exactly. It's an invasion of Israel by the surrounding nations. And we saw on that map the different nations that are involved there. A lot of them are in what we call Turkey now and some other areas around there, right? If you look at them geographically, the names that were used in the Old Testament versus now. And it goes very badly for Israel. Okay, Ezekiel talks about, the horrors of people having to flee, and Jesus talks about that too in Matthew chapter 24. He says, it's going to be, people are going to flee to the mountains, and God forbid if you'd be pregnant in the midst of this or something like that, because people are going to have to flee, and it's going to be a bloodbath, and it's going to be a horrible thing, and this battle's going to take place until the decreed end comes for this desolator. That's Daniel 9:27 also. And so the Great Tribulation ends up being cut short, Jesus says, for the sake of the elect. Now, that's very interesting that he would say for the sake of the elect, because what's kind of, in general, when the New Testament is using the word elect. Who's it talking about? Believers, right? Talking about believers. If you go through, whether you take it in a sort of Calvinistic way of individual election, or you look at it as a corporate type of election, like the church as the elect, and I mean, you can make pretty good arguments for both those things. The word elect is always used to refer to believers. So isn't it interesting that it says that it has to be cut short for the sake of the elect? Because so many bad things are happening. So many being killed. So what does it cut short by then? Jesus' return, right? Son of Man comes back, get to gather his elect from the four winds, right? The general resurrection takes place of people who have already died. It's Matthew 24, 30 and 31, 1 Thessalonians 4, 1 Corinthians 15, that sort of thing. Jesus returns, brings this war to an end, right? Cuts all this short, and there is this final battle. And we call that, in the Old Testament, they called it, though, even in the New Testament, sometimes they use the phrase, the day of the Lord, which is, like Joel described, day of darkness for all nations and that sort of thing. And the day of the Lord takes place, and so it's this period of God bringing judgment, and that brings this to an end. And then after that, the kingdom is set up. The millennial kingdom is set up. Jesus rule on earth, that sort of thing. So that's kind of a general walkthrough of this timeline. So you've had some time to think about this stuff. Maybe you haven't thought about it all summer. I don't know. I think about this stuff all the time because it's just kind of my favorite subject. But, when you can be, sitting there just in my office, and do I want to think about the end times, or do I want to read some comic books? If I had some comic books about the end times, but I don't. Right? Maybe I could start that. Except I have no artistic skill, but anyway. Right? I need to find an illustrator. There you go. Jesus comes back, has the Antichrist in a chokehold, right? Doing a little Brazilian jiu-jitsu on him or something. I don't know. So what do you think? You've had time to think about all this. I'm curious as to your thinking. The final battle, is Armageddon. Yep. Not gonna be a happy time. Yeah, that's for sure. Armageddon is the battle where Jesus comes back and finishes. Right. It's the end of the Gog Magog war. Right. Yeah, the Gog Magog war goes that length, in there, and you've got, for a while, the nations have the upper hand, and then there's God finally executing his judgment, and the day of the Lord comes, Battle of Armageddon, that sort of thing, and ends that. Well, what do you think? Well, what do you think? Yeah? Okay. Other people? What do you think? Right. Right. Well, yeah, and maybe not just the United States. So I'm going to agree that it traditionally, it's always taught as this idea of an absolute one world government ruler sort of thing. But I think it's more of a very charismatic ruler who probably has followers in many, many countries, but that doesn't mean he necessarily has control over all those countries. Um, I don't really picture, I don't really picture Canada sending its army to go against Israel. Doesn't seem to really fit. Does Canada have an army? They have Mounties, they have 2 planes and a tank, maybe. I don't know. I don't know anything about the Canadian military, so. Oh, sure. Well, yeah, for sure. So, and I think you got to remember in the time, especially the prophecies of the Old Testament and the times it's written, the entire focus of it is on the Middle East. It's not geographically even thinking about the rest of the world, which doesn't mean the rest of the world won't be involved. Just meaning that I don't think it requires a one world government, as was typically taught in the 70s, for this to happen. I think it does require a powerful, charismatic leader who's obviously, later in the book of Revelation, we know this leader and his lapdog there, the false prophet, are satanically empowered and they're not to be trifled with. I mean, they're very powerful. I don't think it necessarily means that every nation has to be involved or that every nation has to be under their control. You know, you don't imagine, I mean, Botswana has much to do with the whole thing. And that could be wrong, but I don't tend to think it requires the one world government idea or the one world religion where it's there's the Christian faithful and the Jews who become Christians, two heavenly witnesses kind of thing, versus this one other religion and it's a whole world religion. Everybody else falls down and bows to this one world religion. That's not really required for these events it just needs enough critical mass for it to be a very devastating sort of thing. You can very much picture countries, not just places like Turkey in the Middle East, but you could imagine countries like China being involved, Russia being involved in some way or another, North Korea, right? I mean, or even us being involved, on one side of I mean, it's hard to say. I'm not saying wouldn't necessarily be involved. I just don't think it means that suddenly all these countries are going to secede their sovereignty to this one world leader. But he's certainly going to be powerful enough that there will be some countries that do, because at least in those countries he controls the economy and all sorts of stuff. So there's got to be at least some countries that certainly fall under his control. So if you just look at somebody like Erdogan and nobody go and say, oh, Pastor Orwell thinks Erdogan's the Antichrist. I'm not saying that, okay? But you look at him, one of his ideas is, and he's openly talked about this, I could find you a bunch of news articles that talk about this, is that he wants to unite the Middle East into one Islamic empire. If you unite the whole Middle East, all the Muslim countries, into one Islamic empire, who's at the middle of that empire? Israel. Right? They'd be surrounded because they're surrounded now by Islamic countries. Imagine if they were all united as one big Islamic country with all that money, and these countries are armed. These countries aren't exactly just like sitting around with 2 AK-47s and a hand grenade. These are some well-armed countries, including countries like Pakistan. What does Pakistan have? Right? They've got nukes. Okay? So you got Pakistan, which is an Islamic country, which has nukes. You've got Iran, which is on the verge of having nukes. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Iran makes no bones about where they stand. Exactly. So Turkey has nukes. Where did Turkey get their nukes? Well, that'd be us. Yeah. So kind of a scary thought when you think about it. That's where they got their nuclear weapons, is us. It's going to be very hard for the people that live in these countries. And then you got interesting problems like, okay, so if a war breaks out and Turkey's involved, Turkey's part of NATO. What does that mean? Is that how Europe gets dragged into it? I mean, I'm totally speculating, obviously. So I'm just Hal Lindsaying it here. Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. Yep. Right, it doesn't have total. Yeah, the guy was it the ship Kittim, right? Kittim. Yeah, yeah. I don't remember. I have to look it up. Ships of Kittim, yeah, but not the ships of, but not the settlers of Catan. I thought you said Catan at first. That's what I thought of that game, the Settlers of Catan. Did you ever see it? Did you ever play that game? No. Okay. You played it? Settlers of Catan, yeah. Okay. If we start our own game, Ships of Kittim. Yeah. So it's just it invites itself, and I think this is one of the fun reasons to study end times prophecy, but also one of the dangers. It invites itself to all sorts of speculation, right? You just can't help but wonder, but what if, right? And the thing is, the danger is you've got to be very careful to not let your what ifs become this is. Because too many prophecy teachers go too far, their what ifs become, well, this is. Exactly. 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 You don't see how it's fully fulfilled until after the fulfillment has happened. And so, you know, literally, everything we talk about, we're using our hopefully our best research that we have available and trying to connect the scriptures to the rest of scripture as best we possibly can. But considering that even in the early church, the generation right after the apostles speculated about this stuff and exactly what was going to happen, and they were a lot closer to the source material than we are. Right. Well, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Other thoughts on the timeline? Before I move to our little sheet, which will review the connections between Matthew 24 and the seven seals. Right now, you remember in the book of Revelation. Now I'm on the front side of your sheet here. Some comparison between the Jesus Olivet Discourse and the seven seals of Revelation. Remember in the book of Revelation, there's 3 sets of 7 things, right? There's the seals, and the trumpets, and the bowls, right? Seals, not the R seals. I always have to do that. R. So you were just hoping this time I'd hold a ball on my nose, but so there's these 3 sets of, we call them judgments, but there's the seals and the trumpets and the bowls. And come around next time, we'll get more into the trumpets and bowls. For now, we're just going to review the seals and see how they fit in a little bit, because they seem to fit into the beginning part of this 70th week. Now, one of the things that we'll get into later is how when we use the word wrath, it's really only the bowls that are referred to as wrath, the bowls of God's wrath. Whereas these other things seem to be things that reflect things that are happening on the earth. Okay, these seals. Even sort of witnessed by the fact that the seals are, if you remember the scene in the book of Revelation, there's a scroll, right? And who's worthy to open the scroll? Oh, the Lamb could open the scroll because he was slain. Yada, yada. And the scroll is what has the seals are the seals, the wax seals on the scroll in the whole imagery of it. Okay. And so some scholars will tell you that the idea behind the scroll and the Lamb being worthy to open it because he died to redeem men from every nation, tribe, and tongue is the idea. This comes out of John MacArthur talks about this actually in one of his books. That the idea there, the scroll, scholars will argue, it's the deed to the earth, and he's worthy to. And so these seals have to do with the things that are happening on the earth among men. So, I mean, that's again one of those things you can't prove it because the Bible doesn't say what the scroll. It says it's a scroll, and that the Lamb can open it. But you got these seals, and the seals, interestingly enough, correspond very similarly to things that go on that Jesus describes at the beginning of Matthew 24. So, like in Matthew 24:5, he says, "Many will come in my name, saying I'm the Christ. They'll lead many astray." And you got the first seal. The Lamb opened the first of the seven seals, and first the four living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." There is a white horse, is riding a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. Okay, so there's some sort of rulership. Someone's going to come to conquer. Okay, Jesus talks about there's going to be somebody that's going to come to lead people astray. Okay, so that's the first seal, this conqueror. Now this isn't the war yet. This is just he goes out to conquer. He has a crown. Anytime you see that crown, is the idea that he's allowed to be in charge of something. So there's someone that corresponds to this first seal that rises up to be in charge, and Jesus says there's going to be people led astray. Then Jesus goes on. You hear wars and rumors of wars, that sort of thing. Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Well, the second horse comes out, bright red, and its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. So that one's pretty obvious, right? Jesus says there's going to be war. The red horse comes out. It's a war. It's the horse of war, right? Second horseman is the horse of war. Thanks, Dave. Pretty obvious there. And you notice what it says, so that people should slay one another. It doesn't say anything about God slaying anybody. It talks about people slaying one another. That the war is on the earth, that the people are going to have wars and that sort of thing. Okay? And then you get to the famines, earthquakes, that sort of thing. Then the next seal, open the third seal, and holy living creatures say, "Come," and behold the black horse. And the black horse has scales in its hand, and talks about kind of famine there, right? The idea of how much the wheat sells for and that sort of thing. And then the fourth seal, and you get the fourth horse, and that's death. And death has pestilence and given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill, but by war and famine and pestilence and wild beasts and all that kind of stuff. And what also is very interesting that I did not know until I was just looking at this today, but in Matthew 24, verse 7, all the modern versions say there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. But in the King James Version and in certain Greek texts, it says famines and pestilence and earthquakes in various places. I thought that was interesting because, of course, the fourth seal talks about pestilence. But same kinds of ideas there, right? You're going to have famine, you're going to have pestilence. Quarter, it says, given power over a quarter of the earth. So that's an interesting thing, right? Power over a quarter of the earth. Doesn't say over the whole earth. In this case, it's over a quarter, giving you the idea that a quarter of the earth is involved in all this horrible stuff that happens at the beginning, but not the whole earth, because it's only given a power over the quarter of the earth. Right, the quarter of the earth. That whole, quarter of the earth, maybe. Again, since, right, we could get a ruler out and get my map and, no, but exactly that. But I mean, I think that's the idea, is that this is a geographically limited wars and pestilence and that sort of thing. It doesn't envelop the whole world at this point. So it's geographically limited. Yeah. Right. And wild beasts. Yeah, I know. There's, I mean, the more conservative commentators take it pretty literally, that there's just, because there's so much war and so many dead bodies and stuff, that you've got beasts just, running around and eating things. And the more allegorical commentators will say things like that it's just the idea that everything's gone crazy, and that, you know, it's just, well, yeah. I mean, I mean, you know, got the Bears coming in. I mean, who knows? I don't. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that, but Sasquatches could be Sasquatches. It's true. Sasquatches. Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, yeah, it's very much a possibility. You know, um, I mean, it's interesting because in the times you know in the times this was written, the problem of wild beasts was a much bigger problem than it is for us because not as much was populated. You know, um, so you got the story right in the Old Testament where the kids insult Elisha, right, and the she bears come and eat the kids, right, which is kind of a gruesome story when you think about it. Okay, but you can't imagine that really taking place in Iowa. We'd have a hard time finding a bear to come, you know. I mean, yeah. And I mean, yeah, but even back home we don't have lots of bears. We have bears. We have a lot. I don't have lots of black bears. How much? How many black bears did you honestly see in any given time? A couple at the dump, maybe. Yeah, no, no, it's not a lot. Right. Yeah. So I mean, it's such an interesting idea because you know, back in the time that this was written, you know, you could literally be traveling on the road to Damascus, and I mean, you might encounter some sort of wild beast. You know, the wildest beast I encounter on the road to Ankeny is a deer standing off in the field. You know, and I'm in a car, so it's really not a problem. I mean, you know, if you're traveling in Israel, you're probably not going to get attacked by any wild beasts. I mean, because you're going to be in a car. So it's such a weird, you know, Africa, you definitely could, yeah, yeah, for sure. If you're Middle Africa and traveling through Tanzania in a old 1970s Land Cruiser, you know, you ever see those pictures of the people and they're on safari and they stop the vehicle and pretty soon there's like leopards like climbing over the truck and everything and you're just kind of thinking, nice kitty, nice kitty. So yeah, it's ripping your face off, you know. So I carry what? Lots of catnip. Yeah, you need a lot of catnip for that for the leopard. Oh yeah, I don't think I've seen the second one. Is it really? See, oh man, I'll have to see that sometime. So well, and Jim Carrey was truly funny back then. I mean, as he kind of got later on, I just found him less and less funny. No, but that can't be much different than was it Liar Liar, which that movie is. The one where he can't tell a lie. Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, that movie is hilarious. Um, so funny. But anyway, okay, he does. He's a funny guy. Oh yeah. Okay. Um, okay, moving on. Then Matthew 2:9, they're deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death. You'll be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then in verses 9 through 11 of chapter 6, you got the fifth seal. And what do you have? You have the souls of those who'd been slain for the word of God and the witness they had borne. You got these martyrs under the altar of God, right? And so, same idea there. People being slain, you got martyrdom. And then verse 29 of Matthew 24, after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, the moon will give its, of those days, and blah, 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 stars fall from heaven, powers of heaven shaken. Revelation 6, 12 and 13, when he opened the sixth seal, what do you get? Earthquake, and then the sun became black as sackcloth, moons like blood, stars fell to the earth, like a fig tree sheds its winter fruit that is shaken by a gate. Same kinds of cosmic signs happening there in the middle of this. Um, so, what's that? You can't watch for what? You should get a fig tree. We should plant a fig tree here just so we be biblical. So plant a fig tree. Yeah. I've never had figs like right fresh off a tree, but I've heard they're very good. I've never. I mean, I've generally gotten my figs wrapped in a little cookie shell. I love those things. They're delicious. Oh, really? Yeah. Why do you think I like them? I mean, I was jonesing today for a Hertz donut so bad, but I avoided it. I avoided it. I really wanted a Bavarian cream Hertz donut. No. Did you know that a Bavarian cream Hertz donut has 600 calories? All of them from sugar. No, honestly, it was more of I was just too busy to have time to run to go get one. That's what saved me today. My pancreas thanked me because it did not have to squeeze out extra insulin. Yeah, but yeah, Gatorade is designed for people who have sweat a lot and are losing electrolytes. Yeah. Well, then that's okay. Electrolytes, salt is an electrolyte. Yes. Yeah, but if his electrolytes are low, then Gatorade's okay because that's its purpose is to replace electrolytes. Yeah, I get the sugar-free kind at the gym sometimes. It's really good. The orange. G2. Yeah. Anyway, so you got this whole cosmic signs thing going on, which again also talks about in a lot of the Day of the Lord stuff, talks about cosmic signs and that sort of thing. It's always just moons turning to blood and the sun's blacked out and stars falling from heaven and that sort of thing. Right, right, yeah. No, nah, right. Well, and really most of this stuff isn't any kind of new concept because the prophets talk about the Jews being killed and being martyred for just being Jews and that sort of thing. And that there's going to be wars in the end, and almost every one of the prophets at some point talks about there's going to be a big war and it's going to be bad, and at first God's going to punish Israel and many people are going to die, but then in the end he's going to restore the fortunes of Israel and reestablish the kingdom and that sort of thing, and then he'll never leave them from that point on. And lots of the prophets have exactly that same narrative. Exactly, which is what Revelation finishes with. Exactly. There are several, I would say probably 75% of the prophets have that narrative in some way, shape, or form as part of the prophecy. There's going to be judgment. It's going to be bad for Israel. The nations are going to be allowed to come and attack them. And then God's going to punish the nations. And then Israel will turn to God. And Israel, the turning to God always happens after the war, and they get it, the nations and that sort of thing. Then there's the turning to God, and then God is going to be their God, and they'll be His people, and forever their fortunes will be restored, and the kingdom is restored, and that sort of thing. That narrative occurs over and over and over again in the prophets, and it's the same kind of idea here, and it's the same kind of idea in the Book of Revelation. That same narrative, over and over again. Or at least a worldwide awareness of those things. And I mean, even if the war itself is more localized in the Middle East, I don't think that precludes worldwide cosmic signs. Because we also know, you've read the book of Revelation, so you know later on we get into the whole a third of the earth thing here, and then so it obviously tends to encompass more and more as time goes on. It seems like as the last things go on, more and more of the world is encompassed. But certainly the Battle of Gog Magog seems to be pretty localized. And by localized I mean we're still talking the whole Middle East. We're not not just Israel, that sort of thing. But yeah, the cosmic signs should be observable everywhere, right? Yeah, I suppose that's true too. Yeah. 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 I mean, obviously, if it's a nighttime sign, and you're on the daytime side of the world, you wouldn't see that. But I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing. About prophecy is you can, yeah. How are you going to know until it happens? Because you can speculate and you can try to fit it together, but you can't really be 100% sure. You can't be 100% sure what's going to happen. What happens when it? Well, when we'll get to it eventually. There's the like a third of all the fresh water in the world is turned to blood or turned to made bad or so the star wormwood or what. I mean, is that a third of all the world? Fresh. That's a lot of fresh water. That certainly sounds like a broader than Middle East sort of thing. There isn't that much fresh water in the Middle East. It's mostly a desert. So how does that all fit together? Orville doesn't know. But it's fun to think about it. Other questions about this? All right. Well, we're at 7. It's about 7:30, so that's pretty good for a Wednesday night. I'll let you read the second half of this on the second side and speculate about it. This is where we'll pick up next time, is on the wrath to come idea and the pre-wrath view. Now, let me give you a little background on this. Okay, the number one, at least when I was back in the days of my pre-trib days, the number one argument I always heard about the pre-tribulational rapture is this idea that in 1 Thessalonians 5, it talks about in verse 9, God has not destined us for wrath. And the idea there had to do with, well, the tribulation period is about God's wrath. God hasn't destined us for wrath. So therefore, the rapture that, of course, happens right before 1 Thessalonians 5, 1 through 10, because that's the end of 1 Thessalonians 4, spares us from that wrath. Okay? And so where we'll pick up next time is talking about that and about this idea of how much can you know and how much can't you know and why would you know and that sort of thing. And that comes from 1 Thessalonians 5, and I got a little diagram for you there. That's where we're going to start next time. Okay? So any questions about anything so far? You guys are so quiet. Thanks. Just trying to get you folks speak. That'll be in 2 weeks, right? Because every other week. So, because next week, of course, they'll have a small group, and then we'll be back for prayer meeting and Bible study. Yuppers. In 2 weeks. 2 glorious weeks. Yeah, I do know. I do whatever Renee tells me to do. Yeah. I just whatever the women in my life tell me to do, I just do that, and it keeps me out of trouble. All right, I'm going to turn this video off. Now that we've had our fun talking about the end times. And Jim Carrey, yes. Well, that's important. What's that?